wear many hats in our communities. And it's really about being connected to what is needed at the time. So I am really honored that I'm able to take on this position today. And I'm honored to introduce Dr. Keisha Scarlett. Keisha Scarlett has been doing phenomenal work in the Seattle Public Schools system and bringing all that knowledge into a lot of other educational spaces. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Keisha Scarlett.
Thank you, everyone. Hello, good afternoon. I am so glad to be here. Now, I have some slides, but I don't even know how to get them up. So I'm just going to go with my my talking points here and get started with us. First of all, I just want to thank you so much, Africatown, Brother White King, for inviting me to be a part of this esteemed celebration, really celebration for us, a time for us to come together. I am Dr. Keisha Scarlett, Chief Academic Officer in Seattle Public Schools, a multi-generational member of the Seattle Black community, proud graduate of Garfield High School and Clark Atlanta University, my HBCU. And I want to acknowledge the youth and elders in this virtual community space. And want to also acknowledge my wonderful, beautiful husband, Christopher Scarlett, who is such an amazing support, and our 3 amazing children. And also acknowledge that I stand on the shoulders of my amazing parents, Carolyn Sofer, who are the living embodiment of Black love and Black excellence. And I'm inviting you all in my home so you can hear the dogs bark and the door open, and please be patient with me as I kind of move through this. So I worked in SPS for the past 21 years, over now 10 roles, from teaching to school leadership to district leadership. And with each job shift, I needed to reimagine my role in SPS focused on cultivating and amplifying Black excellence. So yes, Elder Don Mason, I will lead with boldness on behalf of our community and will support the leadership of Dr. Brent Jones as he soon transitions into service as our new interim superintendent. So just to give a little context about the work that we're doing in Seattle Public Schools. In 2019, our school board passed a Seattle Excellence Strategic Plan that was focused on a targeted universalism approach for students furthest from educational justice, starting with African-American boys and young boys. And what they failed to understand that I knew is that nothing would ever be realized in this strategic plan, just like other strategic plans, if we didn't address anti-Black racism and anti-Blackness. What they also failed to realize was that the adoption of the strategic plan mandates transformative leadership that can only come through leading a pro-Black agenda in our system, because Black excellence is Seattle excellence. So our strategic plan, I believe, while bold, has really truly failed to teach for Black lives and teach for Black excellence. And I'm focused on ensuring our strategic plan is focused on both of those. So Brother White King asked me in another email to share about the state of Black children in SPS and the vision for the path moving forward for our children being fully developed in their greatness. And so how are the children? How are Black children? So Black children continue to persist in environments that often feel unwelcoming to them and their families. And we are resilient, and our system was never designed for us to thrive. We have all collectively experienced insurmountable loss. And I just want to acknowledge the loss that many of us and the intersections of us as a Black community and Black family have experienced just here locally in Seattle, but nationally and internationally. But also COVID-19 has brought some relief for Black children in SPS as I speak with families. It has interrupted the white gaze that lays on our children, a white supremacy that always projects of us being less than. Many of our children are experiencing more time connected with their families. Their families and parents are telling me about how they're growing spiritually and culturally. Children are reporting that themselves. Black kids, you all are losing weight. My own son, he's a 2020 graduate of Seattle Public Schools. He's grown 2 inches. We're tall people as Sofers, and so he's 6 feet 6 inches, and he's dropped 40 pounds. And I wonder how stressful the environments really were on him as a young Black male teen who was brilliant yet neurodiverse, having autism, and how he navigates through the school system and through life. Our children are being reminded of their potential to be great, and our children are learning. Despite what's being narrated as learning loss, our children are learning from us. They're learning from the world around us. They're learning from the action of adults. And this meaningful learning does need to be contextualized for them. So as Chief Academic Officer, I reject and refuse to narrate learning loss in terms of Black and Brown children as an impetus for us returning to in-person learning. Many families have expressed, a high percentage of families have expressed an unwillingness to return back to schools because there's no part of our system that has ever made Black people feel safe, or that our children will be safe, or even prioritized in this. And we understand that that's the failing of us as a school system, and actually as a nation of multiple institutions that are failed around healthcare and housing and in schools as well. And so, yes, children have lost access to schooling, and without schools, they've lost access to schooling guided by pacing guides and curriculum maps that determine children. But I'm also concerned about our children's academic and social emotional well-being. But COVID-19 pandemic did not precipitate this concern that we hold for our children. Our children were not thriving in schools pre-COVID. Narrating learning loss for our children often functions as a dog whistle for white entitlement and ignores how our social policies have created racial, economic, and educational inequities and sustained the conditions in which they persist. So I do not believe that we will ultimately find liberatory education for our children in the current structure. And you may say, why, Keisha, do you remain in that structure? You all, our babies are there. I'm in Seattle public schools. I'm in public schools because that's where our children are. So we can't tear apart the entire school system because we don't have anything to replace it. However, we as Black folk are responsible for demanding liberatory education from our schools, our leaders, our educators, our staff, and school board. So one thing that I feel inspired by in my work is work around policy. We currently have a draft pro-Black and pro-Indigenous anti-racism policy. This policy came from community and reflects the exact language that many of you gave during its drafting. It is, if it's preserved in its current form and not weakened nor replaced with earlier drafts, it actually holds the potential to support us in shifting an entire system with a clear through line to academic excellence for Black children. One part of that policy that I'm particularly interested in really working on is talent development. How do we construct and build a whole child Black excellent framework and focus on talent development? Right now in our system, we put so much focus on trauma and wraparound supports. These things are important, but academics oftentimes run tertiary to any of these other areas. And that actually promotes white supremacy thoughts that we don't actually believe as a system that Black children can be academically thriving in our system. So we focus on all the other things and narrate Black trauma. Black folks have been in trauma since we got here. So that's not something new for us. So as we think about the work in Seattle Public Schools, I'm very excited about the work of Dr. Mia Williams, who is the leader and chief of our Office of African American. Their mantra is nothing for us without us. And she is working really hard in this work of elevating Black male voices, she and her staff, and making sure our Black boys are at the center of decision-making in their families as well. And so I know that there's been some feedback about a Black woman being in this position, but I will say on record to all of you that Dr. Williams is the best person for this job in this time. She may not retain in this job forever, but there is no one who can set a table like a Black woman. And so she is setting the table and spending time working in community and working with community leaders in order to elevate the voices of our families. Just this month, there are a number, 6 or 7, maybe 8, of family forums, even more, 3 more next week. We're inviting families to really speak to us and share with us about what their values and interests and priorities are in the education of their Black sons. So as we move forward and really think about where are we and where do we need to go from here to build and maintain Black communities, a few things come into focus for me. So we are starting a Black education program in SPS. I do a lot of racial equity work. Working on tools is super frustrating, pushing against white supremacist systems, but also I have to move in the space of innovation, which is really the anti-racist work. I'm super excited about how we're working in partnership across Mr. James Bush, Dr. Consti Pedroza, Dr. Williams, working on this Black education program in SPS. We currently have a Black studies course that we have students across the district that are part of it, that are part of 11th grade US history as a replacement. Ongoing work funded by our powerful partners, Dwayne Chappelle, leader and director of the Department of Education and Early Learning from the city of Seattle, funding the Kingmakers of Seattle and Kingmakers of Seattle Extended program. Also, the Black Education Project, where we are bringing in community-based organizations to be the teachers for our students and have family opportunities and community opportunities for education and other things that are in connection to education for students and community. Also, something you can expect in the fall is a stronger focus on homeschooling. I want to thank Sister Mayette, who took my call last night, to really bring what the Black Star Line has developed as a village learning model to support Black family engagement and partnership as they navigate remote learning and foster home and community learning opportunities. Another thing that comes to mind is also Black visibility. Africatown really represents this for us. We reject the narratives of Seattle being a white place. Seattle is not a white place. It has, and anytime we say that, we are actually invisibilizing the indigenous and Black histories of this place. Seattle is Black space, and Seattle schools is Black space for our children. So that's what I'm hoping to have happen through our Black education program, but through other work that we're doing across schools. Another area that comes to mind is around building wealth. I remember Nicole Bascom Green, a family member of mine, a realtor from Bascom Realty, spoke last year about owning property as a mechanism for building wealth. It's also a mechanism for us to remain visible in our city. I think about my parents as the prototype. They married and moved to the CD. I moved from the CD into our childhood home in 1968 on Beacon Hill, close to Holly Park. And I watched them push us into all buying homes in our early 20s, supporting us with our down payments from the equity that they have received in their property. They purchased our church property in 1998, then another 3-acre property in Skyway, another home in Seward Park. And even in their 70s, they just purchased the building next door to our church in Skyway to keep legal cannabis folks from opening next door. This builds legacy for our family and for our community. And so when I just visualize where we need to think about moving forward for a thriving community, I think about the Sankofa bird, and Dr. Joy Hardiman had me think about the Sankofa bird recently while I was talking with her, but think about that seed, that egg that is in the bird's mouth. These are our children. Our children are our future. Our school systems continue to capitalize off of Black children and families. We receive funds of school systems through white supremacist narration of Black failure. School systems will continue to use the resources to obfuscate Black brilliance unless we demand for something different. White intellect is what has developed the system that we're in, so we cannot leave the educational futures of our Black children in the hands of folks who won't acknowledge the inherent brilliance of our babies. So school systems would much rather narrate Black trauma rather than our community's Black excellence, in spite of the trauma, racism, and disinvestment and displaced democracy that we continue to battle against. So we must demand the shift of our systems, and our youth are standing on the shoulders of us and can see so much further. Dr. Bettina Love says that. They stand on our shoulders. They can see way farther than we can. So we must support community-based organizations, Black-led organizations that movement build and cultivate youth agency, helping our children to really understand their power, not to just give advisement, but also to act. There's been no movement in this country that's ever happened, or in this world really, without youth at the forefront of this. So our youth are who we should be investing our time in. And so I'm just going to take a little hit from Afrofuturism. I've been thinking a whole lot about it and looking at it a lot, and about how Afrofuturism gives Black folks courage to survive. And, love is our survival strategy, y'all. So loving and nurturing our children has to be our survival strategy as well. And so I'm so glad for this opportunity to be able to share with you. I hope I didn't go over time. And I'm just looking forward to your accountability and your feedback and ways that we can partner together moving forward. Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Well, Dr. Keisha Scarlett. I know I saw people all in the chat just fired up about the work that you are doing inside of Seattle Public School Systems and yet expanding it beyond. Thank you so much.